We'll see if it'll still take it.
We're
So,
live.
okay. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm hoping so. I'm just looking for confirmation. I always look for confirmation from YouTube, um, saying, hey, go for it. So, Mitch, welcome to the call. I appreciate your time as always. And for those of you who are watching live on my YouTube channel, we welcome you. So this is, of course, Conversations with Mitch Gray. However, I don't think that's how it's going to appear in the live feed, only because I just whipped this conversation up real quick and it says my conversations. Um, Last week, Mitch, we did get a confirmation. Last week, we talked about helping men step into giving themselves permission, and I'm still getting over the COVID cough, giving themselves permission to kind of step into therapy because that in and of itself is a challenge. And we talked about where we gave them some questions or some prompts to kind of where would you want to get started if you were to kind of get yourself and give yourself permission to step into, and this is an actual therapy session. This is with a clinical social worker or
Mhm.
clinical certified therapist. This is not coaching. Coaching is something different. This is about addressing deep-rooted issues, challenges, and whatsoever that are going on in your life. And like we said, you engaged in with that. And of course, in 2024, this year, as the time of this recording, began my own journey in that process with, you know, given the fact that I've got PTSD and major depressive disorder.
Welcome to the
And I
club.
don't laugh at that. I just say, we diagnosed me with some good stuff. And so I've got some
Yeah.
things going on that do need my attention.
Yeah.
So I interrupted
Yes.
you. What were you about to say?
I just said welcome to the club. That's all I said.
Well, I appreciate
Welcome
that.
to the
And
club.
and as a man, that was, and not to kind of reiterate some old facts, but for those of you who are just turning in or tuning into this conversation now, um, the fifth and my last, or my most recent, I should say, but I should say my last. I need to use conscious language, right? Suicide attempt was in 2021, and so a lot of things have happened since then, and I've made some really intentional pivots in my life to hopefully ensure that I don't continue that process of, digression and,
Yeah.
falling apart. So what I wanted to kind of focus on today, if that's okay, is maintaining momentum,
Yeah.
maintaining, man, I can't even talk, maintaining momentum in the therapy session. We get started and having to deal with stuff like you said just before the call, takes work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we help men show up for every therapy session?
Yeah. And it's more than just the therapy session, right? There is the work that goes on in the therapy session, but in my opinion, the real work takes place outside of the therapy session. I mean, if you're lucky, you're getting an hour, a week or a month. For some people, it's every few months. If you're really fortunate, maybe you're getting a 90-minute session. But for the most part, you're probably getting a 60-minute session. 10 to 15 minutes of that is breaking the ice, catching up. So you might be getting 40 to 45 minutes of real dig deep work. Actually have some closeout time. So you're probably really getting 35 to 40 minutes. So my point to kind of diagnosing all of that is this: it's not very much time. And any therapist will tell you the real work isn't done in the session, it's done outside of the session. So then the question becomes, how do we maintain momentum from session to session?
Mhm.
Then I would back it up even further and say, how do we maintain momentum from moment to moment? And I think that's where the real magic is, because the moments are going to come, good, bad, and different. The challenges are going to come, good, bad, and different. So, how do we keep momentum once we feel that growth? And I think that's what you're alluding to is the momentum of change, the momentum of evolution, the momentum of growth, the momentum of maturity. How do we keep that momentum toward health moving forward? So my first response is our daily anchors that we've talked about before in this series. That is selecting 5 daily habits that are what I call your daily anchors It could be reading, it could be meditation, it could be physical activity, it could be eating properly, it could be prayer, it could be whatever practice you choose. Have a couple of them, do them every day because those really ground you and hold you to the commitment that you've made. So even in the dark moments when you feel like you have nothing to hang on to, you have those daily anchors. You get out of bed, you practice, you do what you're going to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing would be differentiating intention versus expectation.
Mm.
So expectation might look like, well, I'm expecting this change to happen, or I'm expecting to go into this session and receive something. Intention looks like, here's what I'm going to give this moment with no expectation. Expectation is the mother of all failure. It is the source of misery. It is the greatest source of misery because we feel like we have either failed or been failed when the expectation isn't met. And let's be honest, most of the time in life, our expectations are not met. So why even have them? So we're better off moving toward intention. This is what I'm setting into practice for this moment, whether that's the therapy session or other moments, clearing the air on any expectation and then just receiving what's going to take place. And here's what happens. As we have positive momentum moving forward and we set the intention of productive momentum of moving forward and growing, we relinquish the expectation of anything that could happen. So then any result that we receive, we actually regurgitate it into something productive. Whereas if it's a failed expectation, then we become really frustrated. And that frustration turns into negative energy. That negative energy turns into a negative moment. So the first thing is setting your daily anchors and practicing them. The second thing would be intention versus expectation. Setting intention, releasing expectation. I think those are the two most valuable parts and elements of keeping momentum moving forward. The third that I would probably throw in there, who are you surrounding yourself with? Who are you surrounding yourself with? So what are the outside voices saying? Are you surrounding yourself with people that are feeding your productivity or pulling into your negativity? That's very, very important.
All that is good. I want to take a look more closely at the daily anchors that you talked about, at least to start or as the next part of
Yeah.
this conversation, because you said have five, and then you said the word daily, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's the first thing that came to my head, only because we have the other part of our life going on outside of
Sure.
therapy. And you just said I need to do five things daily. So if somebody's receiving that for the first time and they're thinking, that's a lot, like I thought, let's give them some
Yeah.
let's give them some clarity is all I'm asking. So they may
Yeah.
not be like five things that will consume an hour of your time, or they might.
Right.
So let's
Right.
kind of give some clarity to these anchors that will keep people grounded in their life, help them maintain momentum and motivation moving forward, and supply those daily needs that
Yeah.
we all require in life. And so you mentioned prayer, meditation, and I think you may even mention exercise.
Mhm.
So let's take a look at those things in more depth. What are you talking about? Five. And is this arbitrary or is this really something that a guru has passed on to you?
Yes, I'm the guru. No, just kidding. This is something that I've taken from a lot of people. It's not just one person that I learned this from. It's kind of a mix of my own opinions and perspectives of what I need, and a mix of things that I've heard from other people per se. And five is my number. I like the number five. It's my favorite number. It feels good to me. If three feels good to you, you want to create success. That's the goal. That's the intention, is to create habitual success. And so if three's the number, do three. If one is the number, do one. But they're as simple as my five are get up in the morning. That's one. That takes everyone hopefully does that. But for me, that's important because when you're dealing with severe depression, For many of us, getting up in the morning some days is the work. And so getting up and getting dressed is one of my daily anchors. I get dressed. I don't keep my pajamas on all day long, even on a day that's a lazy day. I at minimum throw on a pair of sweats and a sweatshirt. I get up and I get dressed because that makes me feel like I've done something. For me, it's eating properly. So I track all of my food, and I know a lot of people aren't into that. I would advise everyone to get into that. We should know what's going into our bodies because that impacts our brain activity. It impacts the physics of our body. It impacts our blood oxygen level. It impacts our health level. It impacts everything. And so I would track your food, and I do that every single day for about 3 years now. So I make sure I eat the best way that's good for me. And I've had guidance on that and coaching on that, and I found what works for me. Daily exercise, even if it's just a 15-minute walk. I like to go to the gym. I've done that for years now. I would advise again everyone to get some sort of physical activity. It's just good for who you are as a human. You're going to feel better if you're dealing with depression and other mental health disorders. Physical activity and eating and rest are three of the most important elements. And any therapist or physician will tell you that. So even if it's just doing push-ups and sit-ups, even if it's just doing something at home, getting a chair and doing some dips. I remember back in the day, we used to go to senior centers and we would teach senior citizens how to use cans of vegetables to exercise. And they loved it. Yes. And so anything like that that you can do to move your body, if it's just a 15-minute walk, do that. For me, it's also reading every day. I try and read something. Sometimes it's 2 minutes a day. Sometimes I read for an hour. It just depends. I have different books I rotate through. If you're a religious person and you enjoy reading whatever your religious book is, read that. If you want to find other authors to read, just whatever makes you happy and makes you feel good and releases those endorphins, do that. And then my fifth one for me is meditation every day. Sometimes it is sitting meditation for 30 minutes. Sometimes it's meditation in the shower. Sometimes it's walking meditation. Sometimes I get a lot of meditation done at the gym. That's very meditative for me. I'm in tune with my body. I'm in tune with the spirit world. I'm in tune with what my body's doing. It's just a great time to have silence, to just focus inward and to really spend time with that. So those are my five. Again, for someone else, you may throw spending time with my kids in there, maybe a daily anchor. Just spending time with self could be a daily anchor. I'm going to say it. If you've got the resources, shopping could be a daily anchor that it makes you feel good and you just enjoy doing. Giving to others and serving others could be a daily anchor. So there's all kinds of creative things that you could set apart to be daily for you. As you notice, there's some days that mine take 15 minutes if I don't go to the gym. There's some days that altogether they take 2.5 hours. It just depends on the day. And so I understand that you have to do what's right for your lifestyle. But I would also point out we have more time during the day than we think we do. Even if you're working a 10-hour a day job, you've still got 14 hours of the day left. Even if you sleep 8 to 10 of those hours, you've still got 4 to 6 of those hours of that day left. And so my point to that is to encourage you to think creatively because we're probably spending, I don't want to say wasting time, we're probably spending time on things that aren't inputting to us that we could trade out something that's going to input rather than either be neutral or output.
And so just to kind of add to the value here, the first thing that I thought about when you started, crunching down the numbers, many people drive to and from work. It's called a
Yes.
commute.
Yep.
Depending on where you live, that can be an easy commute of 5 to 10 minutes. Bless you. I'm
Could
jealous.
be an hour. Could be an
But
hour.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that easily, depending on where you live, that commute could be an hour. And if there's, an accident or something, weather, that it can even be longer. So using that time that we typically think of as dead time, well, I can't do anything. I'm in the car. And I'm not saying close your eyes and meditate because that would be dangerous in and of itself, but
Yeah.
audiobooks or audio
Yes.
meditation or some type of affirmative audio something that when you
Yeah.
are in that commute experience, you can make it productive in some way.
Yes.
Now, the two of your anchors you take care of, hopefully on a regular basis, straight up in the morning. So is get up
Yep.
and get dressed. Now you
Yep.
may not get well, and even the food part, eating the right
Mhm.
stuff. So getting up, getting dressed, and having some kind of breakfast start to your day. You've taken
Yeah.
care of three of your anchors within probably the first 30 minutes. And so
Yes.
I don't know if that's cheating or not because
Well,
well, for you
but
it's
here's the
not. For
thing.
you it's not.
There's a there's a point to that. It sets up my day for success, even on the worst of days. The worst of days. By mid morning, I can look at myself and go, "Hey, you got up, you got dressed, and you ate. You took care of your body."
Yeah.
On the worst of days, and if I can at all make it to the gym that day, you got up, you got dressed, you got to the gym, you did something for yourself. And we are the only people responsible for ourselves. And so it is a little bit of a cheat code, but it's a cheat code strategically for a reason. And that is, hey, I got up and I took care of myself. If I didn't do anything else that day, if it was the worst day at work, if it was the worst day emotionally, I can go to bed that night and know I took care of myself. I don't have to depend on someone else to do that for me. And that's a really good feeling. That's where I go back to what we talked about, intention versus expectation. I set my intention, I accomplish my intention. That's why those daily anchors are so important.
And I'm probably going to want to come back to the intention versus expectation because I'm big on expectation. Um, and not because I'm trying to set myself up for failure, but what I'm saying is that I think just as a little pushback, but not to extend this conversation, I would like to come back to intention and
Mhm.
expectation next week. But last for this particular conversation, because I think the value point was made that you actually, I think if I hear you correctly, you record or you journal your food
Yes,
intake. You
correct.
kind of monitor that in a very clear way.
Mhm.
And so I don't
Yep.
want to kind of get deep into that conversation, but the point being made here is that with your anchors, would it be a value, a good thing to kind of create a journal or some kind of, I use notebooks. I literally use those old-fashioned composition books. I don't go
Yeah.
out and buy a specific journal. I kind of always been cued into the composition of the black and white checkerboard, whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm aging myself. Um, would it be, and because I don't like the ring center binder anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they just kind of screw up my hand.
Yeah.
Is it there a value here to kind of write things down,
Mhm.
just to say, Monday, it was a good day and I did X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Tuesday, maybe not so much, but I did X and Y. What's the value of writing things down?
Yeah. I've probably journaled for, gosh, almost 10 years now, for the most part, daily, for the most part.
Right.
The value in it is you get to express it, number one. Number two, you get to reflect. And it's really interesting to reflect back and see the growth and the journey. And to look, I can look back on journals from years ago and go, oh my gosh, I remember that time. I'm grateful for that moment, but I'm glad I'm not there anymore. Or, oh my gosh, I remember when that happened. That felt so good. That was a moment that made me feel so. You get to reflect and celebrate and honor yourself on journaling. But just the matter of expressing and writing down, I'm really big on manual journals. I had an app for a while that was an electronic journal. That wasn't for me. I love the handwriting, and there's actually really in-depth brain studies on what happens to our brain activity when we physically write. It's very different than what happens when we electronically type. And the writing portion actually taps into the creative side of the brain, which for when you're dealing with mental health issues, especially depression, is actually an indicator and an igniter of really healing that depression is tapping into the creative side of the brain. That's why there's art therapy. And so that journaling does more than just you writing on a page. It's actually igniting parts of the brain that can't be lit up otherwise and releasing the types of endorphins that are going to bring about your healing journey, you also, as a bonus, get to go back and reflect and celebrate. And so I encourage everyone, anyone I've ever coached in my life, I've bought probably thousands of journals for people over the years, would be my guess. Because when I used to teach groups of people, I would buy journals, the composition notebooks, and I would hand them out just to give to people. Because, in fact, I still have a box of them somewhere, because journaling is so, so valuable and important. Yes. For my food, real quick, I actually have an app that I do use for my food because it gives me all of my macros. So for people that don't know macros, fat, protein, et cetera, is what
Carbohydrates.
macros are, calories, carbs, et cetera. Yeah. So you have a certain goal and that helps you map out what you want to eat. And it's very, very important. And I've done that for so long that I can tell when I'm away from it and I get off my kind of program, I can feel it in my body really quickly. And so that's how much food is an indicator and a stimulator of our health. Yeah.
Well, good. Mitch, I'm glad that you helped me clarify that. And so once again, always, it's good to see you and I appreciate your time. This has been another edition of Conversations with Mitch
Cheers.
Gray, even though it may not say that in the title of the video. So we'll see you next week. Take care.